My sister secretly rented out my apartment while I was abroad and my belongings were stolen, so I taught her a lesson that made her cry in regret. Now, my sister, she's the opposite of me. She's younger, still living at home with our parents, and let's just say her track record with responsibility is shaky. She's always been the big ideas, no follow-through type. Growing up, she was the one who convinced me to join her schemes, like selling lemonade on a day it rained or trying to train our dog to skateboard. I'd usually clean up after her messes, and somehow she'd always charm her way out of trouble. It wasn't just childhood stuff. I still remember the time in high school when she borrowed my car to impress her friends. She came back hours later with a dented bumper and the gas light blinking. I was furious, but she just laughed and said, "Chill, it's not a big deal." My parents made her apologize, but nothing ever came of it. I ended up paying for the repairs myself. Back then, I let it slide because she was my little sister, but her latest incident was on a whole different level. A few months ago, she started dropping hints about how cool my place was and how she'd love to hang out there. At first, I thought she was just being complimentary, but then she outright asked if she could use it sometimes to hang out with her friends. "It's so close to everything," she said. "It'd be perfect for a weekend chill spot." I don't know if it was my guilt from being the successful sibling or just my stupid trust in family, but I said yes. The rules were simple: no strangers, no parties, and keep it clean. She promised she'd respect the place and even called me the best ever. Fast forward to when I got a short-term gig teaching overseas for 2 months. Before I left, I told her she could stay over occasionally if she needed a break from home. Same rules applied: no strangers, no mess. She agreed with a smile. My parents even chimed in with their usual, "She looks up to you so much. It's good you're helping her." Well, I got back a couple of days ago, and honestly, the nightmare started before I even got inside. The door wasn't locked, it wasn't even closed properly. It was slightly ajar, just enough to make my stomach drop. My first thought was, did someone break in? My heart was already racing as I pushed it open, and I can't even describe the smell. You know that rank combination of stale cigarettes, greasy old pizza, and just pure filth? That's what smacked me in the face. For a second, I just stood there in shock, trying to process it. I wasn't prepared for what I was about to see. My living room looked like it had hosted a week-long frat party, and no one bothered to clean up. Trash was everywhere, and I mean everywhere. Empty pizza boxes were stacked up like some kind of trophy. Corn, fast food wrappers, and crumpled up napkins littered my coffee table. There were random socks, actual dirty socks, just lying around on the floor like decoration. My couch, the one I spent weeks saving up for, was stained with God knows what, and my coffee table had a big chunk missing from the corner. It hit me even harder because I've always been meticulous about my place. I used to keep it spotless, vacuumed floors, dusted shelves, the works. It wasn't just clean, it smelled good too. I liked coming home to the subtle scent of lavender from the diffuser I kept in the corner. It was my little sanctuary, a place that reflected the effort and care I put into my life. Now, standing there, looking at the mess and breathing in the stench, it felt like all of that effort had been spat on. It wasn't just a mess, it was a complete violation of everything I had worked so hard to create. Then someone said, "Hey, man, who are you, and what are you doing in here?" I turned, and there was some random dude sitting on my couch in my apartment, looking at me like I was the intruder. Behind him, a girl was lying down, scrolling on her phone like this was just another day. "Who am I?" I snapped. "Who are you?" The guy blinked like I was speaking a foreign language. "We rented this place from your sister," he said, all casual, like this was the most normal thing in the world. I felt like my brain short-circuited. "You rented it?" I asked, my voice getting louder. "From my sister? This is my apartment." The girl finally looked up from her phone. "Yeah, we paid rent to her. It's our place now." At this point, I didn't even know how to react. My sister rented out my apartment to strangers without even telling me. I told them they needed to leave immediately, but the guy just shrugged and said, "We paid for the month. We're not going anywhere. We have a right to stay." "Oh, hell no." I told them I was calling the cops if they didn't pack their stuff and get out. The girl rolled her eyes but started gathering her things. The guy muttered something about scammy landlords as they left, which almost made me lose it. Once they were gone, I finally had a moment to take it all in. My home, my safe space, was completely trashed, and the fact that my own sister was behind it felt like a betrayal I couldn't even wrap my head around. I started doing a quick inventory. My TV had a crack in the corner. A lamp was missing its shade. Random knickknacks I'd collected over the years were either gone or broken. The kitchen wasn't any better. There were dirty dishes piled up in the sink, and my fridge was practically empty except for a couple of expired condiments. I called my parents, and my dad came over right away. He's not the type to get angry easily, but when he saw the state of the apartment, he was livid. "How could your sister do this?" he kept saying, pacing around the living room. My mom showed up too, and she just looked horrified. "This isn't like her," she said, but I wasn't so sure. When I finally called my sister, she answered like nothing was wrong. "Oh, hey, you're back. How was the trip?" I didn't even let her finish. "What did you do to my apartment?" I demanded. She paused for maybe half a second before saying, "Oh, don't freak out. I was going to clean up before you got back." "What do you mean, clean up?" I asked. "Strangers were living here. My stuff is ruined." "Relax," she said in that breezy tone she always uses when she's trying to downplay something. "It's not a big deal. They paid me to stay there. It's not like they were there for free." I couldn't process the audacity. She didn't just let her friends crash at my place, she rented it out. She made money off my apartment without even asking me. I told her to come over that night to explain herself. In the meantime, I started taking pictures of everything, the mess, the damage, the missing items. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew one thing: this wasn't going to be brushed off as a small mistake. So, she showed up that night, not with an apology, not with any hint of regret, but with this ridiculous "oops, my bad" vibe, like she was a kid who forgot to put the milk back in the fridge. She walked in, glanced around, and wrinkled her nose like the mess offended her. "Wow," she said, tossing her bag onto my already trashed coffee table. "They really didn't clean up, huh?" I stared at her, waiting for some kind of acknowledgement that she'd royally screwed me over. When none came, I said, "This is your mess. How dare you rent my apartment out without even asking me? What were you thinking?" She shrugged. "It wasn't a big deal," she said, sitting down on the very couch that now smelled like it had been marinated in grease and despair. "I mean, they were just crashing here for a bit, and I needed the extra money." "What the hell are you talking about?" I paused, trying to collect myself. "Well, excuse me for not turning my apartment into your personal ATM. You didn't even ask." She rolled her eyes, which honestly just about sent me through the roof. "You were gone for 2 months, she said, as if that explained anything. "You weren't even using it. It's not like it hurt anyone." I pointed to the cracked TV, the stained couch, and the general disaster that was my living room. "Not hurting anyone? Look at this place. My stuff is ruined. You let random strangers trash my home, and you think it's no big deal?" That's when my dad, who'd been sitting quietly at the dining table watching us fight, well, quietly for him, he'd been muttering under his breath the whole time, finally spoke up. "This is not okay, and you know it," he said. "You had no right to do this. It's illegal, and it's disrespectful to your sister." My sister actually had the audacity to laugh. "Illegal? Come on, Dad. It's not like I broke into her place. I had a key. A key I gave you to visit, not to rent out my apartment to strangers." I shot back. "You didn't just cross a line, you bulldozed over it, reversed, and went over it again for good measure," she sighed, like we were wasting her time. "Okay, fine," she said. "They trashed the place. I'll clean it. What's your problem?" I couldn't believe her. "Are you actually this stupid?" I started screaming at her. "Cleaning up isn't going to magically fix my broken TV or replace the stuff that's missing." She scoffed. "Oh my God, chill out. It's just stuff. You're so dramatic." That's when my mom, who'd been sitting there stewing, finally cut in. "Wait, missing? What's missing?" "Some electronics," I said, gesturing toward where my speaker used to sit. "A lamp, a couple of personal things. I haven't even been able to go through everything yet." My sister waved it off. "Oh, come on. You probably just misplaced stuff before you left. It's not like anyone stole anything." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "How would you even know? You weren't here. You rented the place out to strangers and turned your back, as if it's your own place to do what you want. They could have taken anything they wanted." My dad's face was getting redder by the second. "You took money from these people?" he asked, his voice tight. "Yeah," she said, like it was obvious. "I mean, they didn't stay for free." "How much?" he asked. She hesitated, then mumbled a number that was so embarrassingly low it almost made me laugh. "You rented out my entire apartment for that?" I said. "You didn't even cover a fraction of the damage they did." "I needed the money," she said again, like that justified everything. "For what?" I demanded. "What was so important that you thought you could just sell my apartment behind my back?" She looked away, muttering something about bills and stuff, which I didn't buy for a second. Knowing her, it probably went to take out and a shopping spree. At that point, my dad lost it. He slammed his hand on the table, making everyone jump. "You're going to pay for this," he said, pointing at her. "All of it, the damages, the missing items, every single thing. You owe your sister." Her jaw dropped. "I don't have that kind of money," she said with an attitude. "Then you'd better figure it out," he snapped. "What do you expect me to do, pull it out of thin air?" She shot back, her tone getting defensive. "I expect you to take responsibility for your actions," he said firmly. "Responsibility? You're acting like I robbed a bank. It's just an apartment." "It's my apartment." I cut her off. "And you stole from me. You stole my trust, my space, and now my stuff. Don't you dare act like this is no big deal." For a moment, she looked like she was about to argue again, but instead, she said, "Fine, I'll figure it out," and stood up. "But you're making this way more dramatic than it needs to be." "Oh, trust me," I said, glaring at her. "We haven't even started." After her Oscar-worthy "I'll figure it out" exit, I sat there staring at the mess that was once my apartment. My dad was pacing, and my mom was sitting quietly, classic family chaos. My dad finally stopped and said, "You need to do something about this now. She's not going to take it seriously unless there are actual consequences." "Yeah, because she's been so big on personal accountability," I said. "I mean, why wouldn't she take responsibility after shrugging off the fact she turned my home into a dump for strangers?" He ignored my sarcasm. "I'm serious. If you let her get away with this, she's going to think she can do it again." I didn't need convincing. I knew she wasn't going to magically wake up the next day and decide to be a responsible human being. She'd already proven that when she acted like renting out someone else's apartment was as normal as lending a friend a pen. But still, it's not exactly easy to wrap your head around suing your own sister. I started snapping pictures of the wreckage like I was building a case file: the couch, the cracked TV, and there was a random sock in the kitchen. I took a picture of that too because, at this point, why not? I wasn't leaving anything undocumented. At some point, I remembered our texts and thought, if she's this reckless, she probably said something stupid too. Sure enough, scrolling through, I found it, a text from her bragging about how she was making easy cash while I was gone. Easy cash. My apartment was a landfill, and she had the audacity to act like she'd pulled off a genius business deal. That couch alone was going to cost $1,200 to replace. My TV? Another $500, minimum, assuming I could even find the same model. Cleaning the carpets to get rid of the smell of stale beer and cigarettes would be another $300. And that wasn't even including the missing items. I called my dad's lawyer friend after that. I ranted to him about the damages and her illegal sublet. Then he told me, "This is trespassing, property damage, and theft. You've got a case." Hearing the word theft stung more than I expected. It wasn't just about the stuff that was missing, it was about her crossing a line I never thought she would. "Do I really have to sue her?" I asked, still hoping for some shred of decency from her side that would make this easier. "You can try reasoning with her," he said, but his tone made it clear how unlikely he thought that was. "But from what you've told me, she's not exactly remorseful. Sometimes legal action is the only way to make people take responsibility." Great, just what I wanted to hear. Meanwhile, my sister decided to up her game in the I'm Not Sorry Olympics. She texted me later that day, asking if I could stop being so dramatic. Yes, I'm the dramatic one here for being mad that my home got turned into a crash pad for random strangers. She even had the nerve to say, "It's not like anything's that broken." I didn't respond, not because I didn't have a million things to say, but because I was so angry I didn't trust myself to type coherent words. But I sent her a simple message: "We need to talk. Bring a plan for how you're going to fix this, or I'll have to take legal action." She didn't reply, classic avoidance tactic. By the next morning, I'd officially filed a police report. The officer I spoke to seemed equal parts sympathetic and confused. "So, let me get this straight," he said. "Your sister rented out your apartment while you were out of the country?" "Yep," I said, feeling the frustration build all over again just saying it out loud. "And you didn't know about this?" "Nope." "And the tenants trashed the place?" "Bingo." He shook his head. "That's a new one for me." "Well, you've got plenty of evidence, so we'll add this to the file. Make sure to keep everything documented." I left the station feeling like I'd taken the first step but also feeling weirdly numb. This was my sister, how had it come to this? A few hours later, my dad called to tell me my sister had shown up at their house crying. She'd apparently realized I wasn't bluffing about the legal action and decided to play the victim card. "She's going to ruin my life over a little mistake," she wailed. My dad wasn't having it. "This isn't a little mistake," he told her. "You stole from your sister. You put strangers in her home, and now you're trying to make yourself the victim. Grow up." She didn't take that well. According to my dad, she stormed out, yelling about how I was unfair and heartless, because, obviously, wanting your property and boundaries respected is so unreasonable. I spent the rest of the day getting estimates for the damages. The couch alone was going to cost a fortune to replace, and the TV wasn't far behind, not to mention the cleaning service I'd need to hire to get rid of the smell of bad decisions that still lingered in the air. By the evening, I was mentally and emotionally drained. My sister still hadn't reached out with any kind of solution, and it was becoming clearer by the minute that I was going to have to take this all the way. I didn't want to, but what choice did I have? She wasn't taking responsibility, and I wasn't going to let her walk away from this like nothing happened. So, there I was, filling out small claims paperwork. Honestly, the legal stuff wasn't as complicated as I thought it would be. My dad's lawyer friend had already given me a rundown of what to do, so it was mostly just a matter of gathering the mountain of evidence I'd piled up. It wasn't hard to prove my case. She'd left a paper trail as if she were actively trying to make this as easy for me as possible. As I worked on the documents, I got a text. It was my sister. "You're actually serious about this? You're really filing against me?" I didn't respond. The next day, I officially submitted everything to the court. The clerk nodded, stamped the papers, and handed me a copy. "You'll be notified of your court date later." That evening, my parents called to check in. My dad was still firmly in my corner, though he sounded exhausted. "She came by again," he said. "Let me guess," I said. "More tears and excuses?" "Pretty much," he replied. "She keeps saying you're ruining her life and that it's unfair to punish her like this." My mom, on the other hand, was still clinging to the idea of family unity. She kept saying things like, "Maybe there's a way to work this out without going to court," or, "What if you just let her pay in installments?" I appreciated her optimism, but I'd reached the point where I couldn't trust my sister to follow through on anything unless a judge was involved. Over the next few days, my sister went radio silent, which was a blessing in disguise. It made me nervous. What was she up to? Was she actually coming up with a plan to fix things, or was she just hoping I'd back down? About a week later, I got a call from my dad. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "Oh, I bet I will," I replied, bracing myself. "She's claiming you gave her permission to rent the apartment out." "Are you kidding me?" "Nope," he said. "She even showed me a note you supposedly wrote saying it was okay." I had to sit down. "A note? Like a physical note?" "Yeah," he said, "but it's clearly not your handwriting. It looks like she wrote it in a hurry, probably with a crayon or something." I groaned. "She's actually trying to forge permission? Does she think this is going to hold up in court?" "Who knows what she's thinking," he said. "Just make sure you bring it up when you present your case." Honestly, at this point, I wasn't even angry anymore, but if she wanted to play games, fine. I was ready. The court date finally rolled around, and let me tell you, it was an experience. My parents came with me for moral support, and I was more grateful than I wanted to admit. My sister showed up too, with some bargain basement lawyer who looked like he'd been paid in Monopoly money. She had the audacity to act like this was a personal betrayal, like I was the bad guy for wanting my life back in order. Her lawyer tried to argue that we had a verbal agreement allowing her to rent the place out. The judge wasn't buying it. "Do you have any evidence of this agreement?" she asked. The lawyer stammered something about the note, but when the judge saw it, she said, "This is your proof." "It's, a little rushed." "A little rushed?" I said, unable to stop myself. "It's fake. I didn't write that, and anyone with eyes can see that." The judge nodded. "Agreed. This note is not credible evidence." From there, it was like watching a slow-motion train wreck. I presented my photos, receipts, and texts, all neatly organized thanks to my newfound hobby of amateur litigation prep. My sister and her lawyer didn't stand a chance. When the judge ruled in my favor, my sister looked like she'd been hit in the face. She was ordered to pay for the damages, replace the missing items, and cover my legal fees. It wasn't a small amount, and she clearly hadn't been prepared for this outcome. As we left the courtroom, she muttered something about how I was heartless and how she'd never forgive me. I didn't even respond. At this point, I didn't have the energy. My dad stood by me, and I couldn't be more grateful. "You did the right thing," he said. "Yeah," I said, though it didn't feel like much of a victory. Now all that was left was waiting to see if she'd actually pay up. Knowing her, that was going to be another battle entirely. The first week after the judgment, I didn't hear a peep from her, no calls, no texts, nothing. I thought maybe, just maybe, she was busy figuring out how to pay what she owed. As if. Instead, I got a call from my dad. "She's saying she doesn't have the money. She's asking if we can loan it to her," he said. I actually laughed, Like I couldn't stop myself. Let me get this straight, I said. She rents out my apartment without asking, leaves it trashed, and then thinks you two should bail her out? She says she's desperate, my dad replied, clearly torn. Desperate? She wasn't desperate when she pocketed the rent money, was she? I shot back. My dad sighed. I told her no, but you know your mom. Ah, yes, my mom, the eternal optimist who somehow still believed there was a good kid hiding somewhere inside my sister's chaos. Sure enough, an hour later, my mom called. Maybe we can help her just this once, she started. No, I said, cutting her off. Mom, you can't keep enabling her. She'll never learn if she thinks you'll swoop in every time she screws up. But what if she really doesn't have the money? Then she can figure it out, I said firmly. She created this mess. She needs to fix it. Of course, my mom wasn't thrilled with that answer, but I stuck to my guns. This wasn't just about the money, it was about teaching her a lesson, one she clearly hadn't learned yet. A few days later, I got a text from her. Not an apology, not even a hint of remorse, just this: can we talk about a payment plan? I can't pay everything at once. Payment plan? This wasn't a car loan or a Netflix subscription. This was her debt for wrecking my life for 2 months. But fine, I agreed to meet her. I figured maybe, just maybe, she was starting to take this seriously. We met at a coffee shop near my apartment. She showed up late, of course, and immediately launched into how unfair the judgment was. I mean, I get that you're upset, she said, but don't you think the court went a little overboard? It's not like I burned the place down. I stared at her, genuinely speechless. Are you seriously trying to argue that this isn't a big deal? You rented out my apartment to complete strangers. My stuff is broken, things are missing, and I've spent weeks cleaning up after your mess. Okay, but I didn't think it would turn out like that, she said, defensive. Of course you didn't think, I snapped. That's the problem. You never think about how your actions affect other people. She rolled her eyes. Fine, whatever, she said. I'll pay. I just can't do it all at once. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. How much can you pay now? She shrugged. I don't know, maybe a couple $100. That won't even cover the cost of the cleaning service, let alone the damaged furniture. I was stunned by her nonsense. Well, it's all I have right now, she said, as if this was a negotiation. Then you'd better start budgeting, I said, standing up, because I'm not letting this drag out for years. Over the next few weeks, she started making payments, barely. It was like pulling teeth to get anything out of her, and every payment came with some snarky comment about how I was bleeding her dry. I got sick of it all. One day, she accidentally sent me a Venmo payment labeled as for my greedy sister. Oh, yeah, super mature. I didn't even bother responding. Meanwhile, my parents were stuck in the middle. My dad, bless him, was firmly on my side, but my mom was still trying to play peacemaker. Maybe you could forgive part of the debt, she suggested one night over dinner. I told her, Mom, this isn't monopoly money. It's real damage to my apartment. I'm not just letting it go. I know, she said quietly, but she's your sister. She stopped being my sister the second she decided to make money off my apartment, I said. Okay, maybe that was harsh, but I was done sugarcoating things. Family doesn't give you a free pass to screw people over. Remember that disaster with my sister and my apartment? Well, after months of back and forth, dodged responsibilities, and her usual passive-aggressive antics, we finally reached some kind of ending, sort of. She ended up short by a couple $100, but at that point, I honestly didn't care. I just wanted it all to be over. The last payment came through with a Venmo caption that read, "There, you happy now?" Which was so on brand for her that I almost laughed, almost. Instead, I just marked the debt as settled and went back to focusing on getting my life back to normal. Now, here's the thing about normal. You don't just snap your fingers and go back to the way things were, especially when someone has stomped all over your trust like it's a doormat. My apartment might have been fixed, but the cracks in our relationship were another story entirely. My mom kept pushing for some kind of reconciliation, saying things like, she's your sister, and family is forever. Yeah, well, so is the trauma of walking into your home and finding strangers living there, I'd reply, which she didn't find as funny as I did. A week after her final payment, she sent a message, so, are you going to unblock me now or what? Unblock her? As if this was some minor argument about who ate the last slice of pizza and not a months-long ordeal involving lawsuits and a wrecked apartment. I figured if she couldn't be bothered to say, I'm sorry, after everything, then she didn't deserve a reply. But, of course, she didn't take the hint. A few days later, she showed up at my apartment, which was a bold move considering she'd lost all key privileges the moment I had to call the cops on her tenants. "What do you want?" I asked, standing in the doorway like a bouncer at a club she wasn't cool enough to get into. She rolled her eyes. "I just want to talk." "Can I come in?" "Not a chance," I said. "Say what you need to say from out here." She crossed her arms and let out this dramatic sigh, like I was being the unreasonable one. "Look, I know I screwed up, okay? But do you really have to keep holding it over my head? It's not like I murdered anyone." "Oh, great, the classic it could have been worse defense." I leaned against the door frame and said, "You didn't murder anyone, but you did steal my trust, trash my apartment, and force me to go to court to get my money back. So, yeah, I think I'm allowed to be a little annoyed." She looked embarrassed, which was honestly more satisfying than it should have been. "I already paid you back," she said, her tone defensive. "And that makes it all better?" I asked. "Do you even realize how much stress you put me through? How much time and energy I wasted cleaning up your mess?" She just said, "So what, you're never going to forgive me?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "Forgiveness isn't a switch you can flip. It takes time, and right now, I'm not there yet." She didn't like that answer, but instead of arguing, she just muttered, "Fine, whatever," and left. After that, I didn't hear from her for a while, which was both a relief and kind of sad. Despite everything, she was still my sister, and part of me wanted to believe she'd eventually get her act together. But I wasn't holding my breath. Meanwhile, my parents kept trying to play referee. My mom suggested we all go to family counseling, which I immediately shot down. "I'm not paying a therapist to listen to her make excuses for an hour," I said. My dad, bless him, just said, "If anyone needs counseling, it's her." Life slowly started to feel normal again. I replaced the last of the damaged furniture, deep cleaned every inch of the apartment, and even redecorated a bit to make the place feel fresh. It was like hitting a reset button, not just on the apartment but on my own peace of mind. For now, I'm just focusing on moving forward. The apartment is back to being my sanctuary. My parents have finally stopped bugging me about making amends, and my sister is keeping her distance. Maybe someday we'll figure things out, or maybe we won't. Either way, I've learned my lesson. Boundaries aren't just a suggestion, they're a necessity. As for my sister, well, I hope she's learned something too, but if she hasn't, that's not my problem anymore.